the folks on scene under fire are the ones running the show. You don't have any idea really what's going on there. As an incident commander, you need to be able to help where you can and get more resources coming. And but jumping over the top of them, making all these broad declarations, and sometimes that's probably not going to be the most helpful thing.
Stay tuned. Coming up, we interview Eugene-Springfield Fire Battalion Chief Chris Paskett, sharing details about a first-in-engine crew at a working structure fire taking on gunfire. Hello and welcome to the Situational Awareness Matters Show, episode 385. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SA Matters mission is simple. We want to help you see the bad things coming and time to prevent bad outcomes. Today's feature segment is sponsored by Gassaway Virtual Training. There are 33 online training programs there for you to choose from. Some of the programs are live events presented virtually to your members, and some of them are pre-recorded programs. To learn more, visit samatters.com website and click on the Virtual Training tab. All right, in case you missed the big announcement, we're expanding our mission and adding a cadre of master instructors. We were on track to do this in June of 2020, but the pandemic kind of stalled out the plans. But now that we seem to be making the turn and things seem to be getting back to some form of normal, the demand for our programs is ramping up again. So we're moving ahead full steam. We'll be onboarding 6 new master instructors to supplement the one that we already have. These instructors bring amazing credentials that include fire officers, a police officer, and an industrial trainer. And one of our master instructors, based in the Netherlands, will be focused on growing our business in the European and Asian markets. I'm sure you'll be hearing much more about this, and there'll be a lot more to share after they complete the 5-day intensive Train the Trainer program in January. Okay, let's jump into our feature segment, part 2 of my 2-part interview with Eugene-Springfield Fire Battalion Chief Chris Paskett, sharing details of a first-in-engine crew at a working residential structure fire taking on gunfire. So, what do you guys do next?
Well, at that point, I took command from that location and started to build a resource plan to address the out-of-control fires that was turning into a conflagration. We didn't know, had a lot of unknowns at that point. We didn't know if there were civilians down. We didn't know how many shooters there were. We didn't know what the scope of the fire problem was going to be by the time we were able to get back into the scene. And so I ended up calling for a third alarm and staging resources kind of for 2 different scenarios. One would be a fire that's rapidly expanding and that's going to be burn down a half a city block before we can get in there. The other scenario was a mass shooting, and so those were the two thought processes that I was working off of. So, and being, with the fires being so close to the fire station, we could see the glow. We could see it getting bigger and bigger. And we have a police radio. We could hear the police engaging the suspect. And so kind of trying to, figure out when when is going to be okay for us to engage this scene. So at that point, we got, I think we had something like 20, 21 or 22 fire resources there, from engines to trucks to ambulances, and I got word that the scene was code 4 to enter, which for us would be there's no immediate threat on the law enforcement side. And that's something that I'd like to come back to today, because it's a piece that we've really talked about quite a bit, as far as can a scene ever be code 4? Can it ever be safe? And my opinion is no, it can't. But so once we re-engaged the scene, we had 4 houses on fire. So 4 fully working residential structure fires going, and so that was unfortunate and frustrating, that it had, that he had not only caused, he had lit his own house on fire, but that he had, his actions had, allowed these other houses, these other innocent folks, these residents, to have to evacuate and flee their houses as well. So,
did you have any trouble re-establishing your presence at the scene? I can only imagine that there was a very significant police presence, and therefore my mind says that maybe where you would normally park would have been occupied by many police cars. Did that present a challenge for you guys?
yeah, I think that's a good thought process, and a lot of times that does seem to be the case. In this case, the primary responding agency was Springfield, and they did a great job. They did a great job of engaging the suspect while still allowing us to get in and do our job, and set up a safe a perimeter for us, and communicate well with us as far as what they were finding and what they had. So just really kudos to them for doing a fantastic job. We were able to get in immediately, broke this into divisions, and so there was, not only were there 4 houses, but we had a gas leak and electrical lines down, and just a lot of peripheral hazards, and so we were able to just take pieces of the scene and work on those in different divisions, and
What did the police do to neutralize the shooter?
they cornered him until he took his own life.
Okay. And then how much time after that until the police told you that, okay, we're reasonably sure there's not a second shooter? I mean, I would assume that's not like right away.
Yeah, and I think one of the benefits of having that interoperability and that communication with the police department is, as a incident commander, I know in real time what they're doing, and so I'm not going to commit resources until they say it's safe. But if I'm hearing that we have the shooter neutralized, and we're doing a sweep, and this is what we have, and excuse me, I don't see any other residents down. I don't see, so I'm getting this. It's really good information, and being able to make some decisions based on some of that. So we're not going into a scene completely cold and trying to gather all that information at the same time. So I'm not sure exactly, to answer your question, how long that was. It was several minutes, from the time that they felt like they had the primary shooter neutralized to the point where they were calling us in to the scene.
Okay. So by the time you're able to re-engage the scene, you have 4 houses burning, gas leak, power lines down, possible mass casualty incident because you don't really know for sure who else you might have shot and where they might be. What
Mhm.
kind of support did you have at the commander level at the front end of this? You
Yeah.
have three alarms of companies on the scene.
Yeah, we had a lot of companies. We, when we call for greater alarms, that starts to get other people involved as well. So deputy chiefs and additional uh, chiefs. I had my counterpart, battalion chief in the downtown Eugene area, was there real quickly after I got there, and he did a phenomenal job of taking all the resources that I ordered and kind of putting them into a manageable spot for me to use them. And so, they were right where they needed to be, staged out appropriately. And so, calling in for me, when I was calling in resources, it was easy to communicate with them, and I was getting who I called, which sometimes doesn't happen. But so yeah, I think some additional battalion chief support and deputy chief support, um, and I ran that scene until it was stabilized, and then I was done. I was really spent, and I think I've never felt that way before, as far as so emotionally drained. Um, I was in it, I was doing it, but as soon as the scene was stable, and there was another battalion chief that was there that was able to, he said, "Hey, do you want me to take over or transfer command?" I was like, "Yeah, I do. I'm done." So.
Up to that point, you said, I want to make sure I understand. You were command. Did you have a command team? Did you have somebody on the radio, somebody scribing a command aid, any of that, or were you at on point at command?
I was the only one on point at command at the command post, and um, I had an additional battalion chief helping with me with staging. I had a battalion chief that was interfacing with the natural gas company. I had a deputy chief that was running a division for me, and so I had help, but I was by myself in the command post.
Okay. And
Um,
was the command like a unified command with police, or was it just fire command post?
well, that was one of the things that I would have liked to have done differently, and that's honestly a piece that we are doing a lot better now, and that is having that unified command. We had trained and talked about establishing a unified command. It wasn't something that we did very well. We were communicating with police, but we did not have the actual physical unified command presence with them. And so, that's a piece that we've, like I said, we've had multiple shootings and violent incidents since this time, and in a lot of those cases, we have been able to establish a physical unified command with the law enforcement agencies involved. And so, I think it's a piece, a growth piece for us, and a progression as we enter this new world, and where this is unfortunately not as uncommon as it once was.
Okay. The incident
Um,
is just slightly over 3 years old. So I'm going to guess in the course of that time, you've had plenty of time to both individually and maybe organizationally to reflect upon this, and discuss what were our lessons learned, or maybe the organizational, as you talked about, like you do unified command better. So I assume that maybe was that incident maybe had some influence on that as well.
Mhm.
Did you guys do any form of post-incident review, assessment, evaluation? I don't know what term. There's so many terms that can be used.
Yeah. Yeah. And we did in a sense. What I did was I created and we call them after action reviews, and I created a 17-page after action review that incorporated interviews with everyone that was primary players in the incident, um, and kind of put the pieces together. But I think the biggest thing I was trying to do in that after action review was I was trying to find recommendations and take home points that we could learn from, because this is this you know if it happens again, it's something that you want to have some sort of concrete take home, that we can say, no, we should do this, or here's what we should say, or those types of things. And so that was really the driving force behind trying to go through this with a fine-tooth comb.
And what are some of the things that you learned from this, or things that your organization changed as a result of this?
Well, that's just an interesting conversation, because I think we're still learning about how to proceed in a violent incident when you're a part of it. And part of I'm working on my doctorate in education, and part of that is kind of going through the pieces of learning in an organization, where we can take things, and we can embed them in the organization, so not everyone has to experience the same thing. We want to try to stay away from a lot of experiential learning, and try to learn from the lessons of each other. And this is one of the hardest pieces to do that with. And I think one of the things that was a take home was just asking the question, how do we make sense of something that doesn't make sense? So, I think we had talked previously, or you had mentioned about that sensory domination, the sensory overload, and that was a piece that happened here in this situation. And just to put this in, I'm 100% confident that had we not had the experienced crew that we did, that were calm and were able to think on their feet, think quickly, communicate appropriately and accurately, that we would not have had this outcome. I am 100% confident that we would have had a different outcome here. So really, a lot of that came back to looking at their actions as a best practice almost, and looking at, well, what did you do here? And what did you say here? And it worked. And it was, here are all the options that we could have done, but really you chose the best option based on all the information you had available. So, yeah.
When you talked to that company officer, what was his assessment of, or maybe not assessment, but his perspective or advice about how does a company officer stay calm when their crew's under gunfire? I mean,
Mhm.
I can't imagine that's an easy thing to do, and it's such a novel event too. I would guess, unless any of them served in the military, they've never been shot at.
Mhm.
So did that company officer reveal anything worth you'd say notable as to how they maintain their composure through that?
Well, I think, part of it had to do with experience, and part of it had to do with just his makeup, but I think in getting back to that sensory domination overload mentality, that um, you know, I think one of the take homes is, Carl Weick talked about, he did a report on the Man Gulch fire, which 13 firefighters perished in that, and he talks about sense making and what happens when you have a sudden loss of meaning, um, and your ability or inability to rebuild some sense about what is happening. And so that's really what we focused on, or tried to focus on, is, hey, when you are having an incident that isn't making sense, just stop. Just, I mean, what he was hearing gunshots, he was feeling, a shotgun blast, he was seeing a fire, he was smelling smoke. Like, all of his senses were being assaulted by different stimuli. And so, and he did exactly that. When he was having that misalignment of his senses, he just stopped and he said, "What was that?" And tried to gain, the ability to rebuild what he was not understanding. And so, I really think that that's one of the best takeaways that we can gain from this, is sometimes it's going to take a second to figure out what's going on. And so that was one of the things that he did really well. And I think that even though he didn't see the gunman initially because he was hidden by the cover of darkness, he had in his mind that something was not adding up, and it allowed him to be on the lookout, and then probably see that gunman earlier than he may have otherwise.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the other takeaways that you were able to determine when you were prepping your after action review?
Yeah. Other takeaways were, I think, trying to understand how to run an atypical Mayday. We need to not only be able to do that, but we need to focus on the things that are most important. And it's not always, how we practice on a fire scene. And so in this case, it's really, the folks on scene under fire are the ones running the show. You don't have any idea really what's going on there. As an incident commander, you need to be able to help where you can and get more resources coming. And but jumping over the top of them, making all these broad declarations, and sometimes that's probably not going to be the most helpful thing. Sometimes you might need to be guided by what you're hearing, that traffic, that radio traffic, and then be a little more reactive and work together to come up with some sort of a solution, because it's going to be different every time, in those types of scenarios.
I have a question for you about your radio silence protocol.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to first make an assumption that is not a protocol that is invoked very often. Is that a fair statement unto itself?
Yeah, that's certainly a fair statement. I mean,
and in this incident, when it was evoked, was there enough discipline for people to quite literally be silent, or was there kind of the remnants of we don't do this very often, so radio silence was not something that we were super disciplined at, just for a lack of practice? I'm not saying you. I'm just curious if it happened that way.
From my recollection, it did. And really the only people talking on the radio were the company officer and the medic that was pinned down. and me. And so, had I had to do it over again, I probably would have backed off a little bit on my traffic, which I felt was, I felt it was essential traffic. But in hindsight, we can listen to it and say, that might not have been, or could have given him a little more airtime here, because there's going to be some push and pull there. But I think as a department, we did a really good job.
Good.
From that perspective. Yeah.
Now, it doesn't escape me. You had 6 months in the battalion seat with a active shooter shooting at firefighters, possible mass casualty incident, 4 houses burning, don't know about entrapment, a gas leak, power lines down, 3 alarms on the scene. How do you manage that with 6 months experience? I'm sure you, maybe even as a company officer, never even came close to having that level of complexity thrown at you in a really compressed amount of time as well. So what's a tip or some advice you'd give to that new company officer that's out there now listening or watching this and sweating, thinking, my God, I've been on the job 6 months. I do not want anything like that to happen. So how do give them some encouragement or tips?
Sure. Yeah. I think the way that I think about it is I have complete and total confidence, and I have complete and total humility, and I can have those together. I can have them at the same time. And the confidence piece is, I am well trained. I have gone through, and put myself in positions where I can be successful. I've gone and, done simulations, and I've done all these things that I truly believe that I can be successful in any in any situation. And that's the confidence that I think that you need to, if you're going to be in a position where you're sending people into harm's way, I think you have to have confidence that you're going to be able to make good decisions. At the same time, I like to say I don't know anything, or I like that, because what it does is it helps you to rely on the people around you. And so I can be confident in my decisions, and also say, hey, what am I missing here? Do I need to get another division going for this? Is this a problem? What are you seeing that I'm not? And really truly want the answers to those questions as a pessimistic incident commander. So knowing that, and that's the other piece for me, is I am going to assume that things are going to get worse before they're going to get better. And so I'm going to prepare for that. And I'm going to call probably too many resources, more than I need. I'm going to put people in positions, where if the fire jumps, they're going to be there to put it out. Just be that pessimistic incident commander. And so I think those two things, the humility to know that you don't know everything, and the confidence to know that you're well prepared, and you can have those, and those are not mutually exclusive.
Good advice. What other tips or lessons or takeaways do you have that came from this incident?
I think another one was we put a little class together on initial and ongoing scene assessment. And I think in looking at how we do business, it was very apparent that we don't do a good job in the fire service of maybe preparing our folks for a scene that's never going to be safe. And, I got my EMT in 95, my national registry. And I think most of us can attest to this. The first thing we do when we walk through the doors, we say, BSI, scene is safe. And we show our gloves, and we've said to the proctor that the scene is safe. Therefore, now we're going to do a patient assessment. And we never give scene safety a second thought. And that's not how the real world works. And especially now where we have emergency service workers being assaulted almost daily. That is an antiquated and ineffective thought process. And so what we're trying to do is help our folks to understand that an initial scene assessment is crucial, and just as crucial is an ongoing scene assessment. And so we want our folks looking around, we want them to understand a couple of things. One is there is no call that's ever going to be the same. You could run the same on the same person at the same nursing home 100 times, and it's going to be different all 100 times. The weather's going to be different. The time of day is going to be different. Their injury is going to be different. All of these factors are going to be different. And so to get complacent that we know, or we've seen this before, or whatever, on the 101st time, unfortunately, right after this incident, a career fire captain was killed at a nursing home. He was shot. And so, understanding that, the 101st time, something that you never thought possible becomes possible. And so we want our folks to understand that. The other thing that we want our folks to understand is that we are going on a lot of calls with PD, with police agencies. And it's not their job to make everything safe. They're going to do everything that they can to make it as safe as possible. But there's only, sometimes there's only one officer on scene. Maybe there's two, but they don't have the capacity to make everything safe to the point where nothing will ever change. And I think that needs to be a little more, that onus needs to be a little more on us to be able to say, yeah, it's our responsibility as well to keep a lookout, to make sure that we know what we're getting into, to verbalize if we're uncomfortable in the situation, to ask if that person has been searched. All of these things are in our arena, and we have the ability to affect a positive outcome. And so what we're trying to do is when we put a fire under control, that's a benchmark for us. So, when there's no more active fire, we understand that there could be a lot of other stuff going on scene. So as an incident commander, I'll put that fire under control over the radio, but it doesn't mean we're done. And it doesn't mean that we can't have a collapse and kill firefighters. So we're trying to look at these police scenes as very similar. When the police call us in and say, it's code 4 or it's all clear, it's good information. But, as we learned in Appleton, Wisconsin, we had a tragic incident where a firefighter was standing behind the police officers and was shot and killed. And so we know that this stuff can continue to happen, even if we've got police standing around us, forming a circle. And so that's really on us to have that ongoing scene assessment.
Chris, is there anything that you would want to share with the audience that you haven't had the chance to share because I didn't ask you the right question?
I don't think so. I really enjoyed talking with you today. I think, one thing that was really kind of a big deal in this incident is the crew that was under fire. They, once they checked themselves and were able to say, yeah, we're okay, they came back in and were one of the first crews to pick up hoses and start fighting fire again. And that was kind of a hard one for me as the incident commander. I wanted to protect them, and I wanted to keep them, out of harm's way any further. But what I didn't realize is that that was that was helpful for them. And in the grand scheme of things, and as we've gone through and dealt with the aftermath of this incident, that was a big piece. That them coming in and doing something positive in that scene was really good for all of them. So that was an interesting piece, and I really appreciated them for taking the initiative and going and being the first ones back in. The other thing is, I really need to give a lot of emphasis to therapy and mental health, counseling, and all the things that we feel like are starting to come on, I think, in the fire service. But I think we really need to, it needs to be out there, I guess, further. And it's one of my platforms that some of us felt really broken after this call, and we don't have to be broken people. There are things in place for us to work through the pieces that are giving us a hard time, and come out just fine on the other side. And so for me personally, I can share that I had I've been doing this for over 20 years. I've been on a lot of serious calls, and I've never had a physical manifestation, until this call. And afterwards, every time I got a call at night, my heart rate went up. I felt diaphoretic, like I was having a physical manifestation to going on a fire in the middle of the night, and potentially having this this destructive and traumatic event happen again. And so that was really interesting to me, and had never really gone through that. And so but going through and addressing that, with there's something called EMDR. I think most fire and EMS professionals and police officers should look into that, because it's very effective. But there's going through some of those pieces, was able to get right back to where I was before the incident. And so go ahead.
Did the department have a mechanism in place to provide that kind of help, or did you have to go seek that out on your own?
Well, this was a good kind of impetus for us to come together on that. The department and the union came together to provide counseling. The local partnered with the national IEFF and got some resources in to help. The other piece was a lot of families were struggling that weren't on this call, because I think for the first time, spouses and children realized that this was a possibility, and they hadn't prepared themselves for that necessarily. That mom or dad could go to work and get shot and killed. And, so that was new for people, and it was a new threat to, to their loved one. And so we saw a lot of people go through the therapy and the counseling and couples therapy that, weren't directly involved with the call. So again, the department and labor came together to make those resources, plentiful for our folks to access.
Anything else before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I appreciate the opportunity, and happy to to reach out to anyone that would like to either hear more or go over some of the lessons learned. And I'll just put a plug out there for I'm doing a lot of work in firefighter education and how we learn on duty, and some of the barriers that we face learning on duty in the current environment, where all of us are way busier than we ever have been. And what that looks like for us. And so I am happy to connect with anyone that would like to talk about that as well.
And if somebody wanted to reach you, how would they reach you?
You can email me directly at crpaskett, PASKETT, @gmail.com, or you can contact Eugene-Springfield Fire.
Okay. And I'll make sure to put that email address in the show notes. Chris, thank you for being with me and sharing this powerful story. I would call it amazing that you had such a good outcome to an incident that held the potential to be so tragic for your department. And I'm glad it worked out that way, but I think if circumstances were just slightly different, it just could have been a horrific event. And I'm glad that you guys are taking a lot of the lessons and making changes and looking at how you're doing things. And I think you're sharing this experience here are going to help other departments to see where their opportunities are to get ahead of something like this happening and do some proactive things to make changes in their organization to be better ready for it, if or when it will, and there will be a when it will happen again to another department. So thank you for the gift of your time and knowledge.
Absolutely. I'm happy to help, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Chris Paskett, for sharing that amazing story and your lessons learned. Remember, this is part 2 of a 2-part show, so if you missed part 1, you might want to go back and give last week's show a listen. Since the start of the pandemic, I've had some tremendous opportunities to present my programs on a virtual platform to groups ranging in size from 6 to 400, with recorded playbacks being viewed over 29,000 times. Here's hoping that booster shots and maybe a mild form of a new variant that I'm hearing about now will help us to continue our quest toward returning to some form of normalcy. Thank you to the organizations that have hosted programs, live and virtual, since the start of this pandemic. Recently, the programs have included the International Association of Fire Chiefs, Volunteer and Combination Officers Section Symposium in the Sun, Char West Council of Governments and the Bridgeville Fire Department, the Williston, Vermont Fire Department, the Montana Bureau of Land Management, the Worthington, Ohio Fire Department, and the Waukesha, Wisconsin Fire Department, who enrolled 100 of their members in the Situational Awareness Matters Online Academy. A special thanks to the organizations that have allowed me to offer your members virtual training during this pandemic period. If you're interested in hosting a live event or a virtual program, just click on the Contact Us tab at the top of the SA Matters homepage, and I'll give you a call. Finally, remember to check our show notes for how to subscribe to our newsletter and how to follow us on social media. There we share ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to improve the skills of critical thinking and resilient problem solving. Well, that's it. Episode 385 of the Situational Awareness Matters show is complete. Thank you again to my guest, Battalion Chief Chris Paskett, for sharing your amazing story with us today. And thank you to our viewers and listeners for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters show with Dr. Richard Gassaway. If you're interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit his website, samatters.com. If you're interested in booking Dr. Gassaway for a program, or if you would like to be a guest on his show, click the Contact Us tab at the top of the homepage.